Welcome to the show. I'm thrilled to have with me today Bill Reeb and TOMMYE BARIE. Welcome to you both.
Great to be here.
Well, we've got a double header. We don't often do this because it's an interview show, so we'll see how it goes. But we're thrilled to have you on the show. And for the benefit of people listening that haven't come across either of you, would you both give us a little introduction about your background and what you do right now? TOMMYE, can you start with that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rob. So I was in public practice for 35 years as a CPA and got to the point where I was ready for a change in my career. I have known Bill and our other partner, Dom, for a number of years. And once I had the opportunity to join them and still stay connected to the profession, but in a much different light, then that's what I've been doing the last couple of years and really, really enjoy the work that we do.
Sure. We'll dip into that a little bit more. Bill, what's your background and what do you do right now?
Well, right now I make things up for a living. So as you'll hear shortly, that's what we do. We consult with firms. About 70% of our business is firms that will range anywhere from $500,000 to hundreds of millions of dollars. So we work with all sizes of firms. TOMMYE is much less self-aggrandizing than I am. She was the past chair of the AICPA 2014-2015. I just finished my term in May. We have been written up as one of the top 10 consulting firms, most recommended consulting firms for years, as far as I know, as long as they have been keeping track of that with IPA. We've got multiple books out that help the profession everywhere from succession to how to be a trusted advisor. So our background is varied, and what we tell people is there is nothing that goes on in a CPA firm that we're not in the trenches helping them solve. We're not theorists. We actually help firms make all the changes that we'll talk about today.
Sure. And TOMMYE, what kind of shape do you feel the accounting profession is in right now? There's a lot going on, isn't there?
Yeah, I think there is a lot going on domestically and from a global standpoint. And one of the beautiful things about our profession is just its pure resiliency of whatever is going on around us. We have the ability and have proven that over the years to just reinvent ourselves so that we can remain relevant in the marketplace and we can provide value to our clients, and certainly in times like this.
And TOMMYE is on IFAC, which is an international body that works with the global profession.
Sure.
He's a board member.
And when you hear words like reinvent, agility, adaptability, Bill, they're not normally words we associate with accounting folk, are they?
Well, we do.
Okay.
I can just tell you that there is no profession in the world that is dynamic and diverse as we are. Over half of our profession in the United States, and I think those numbers would prove out globally, are in industry or education or government. The other half are in public. And when you consider the fact that as an accounting profession, we are in what's called the traditional sense in public accounting, we have every job imaginable, from being CEO to being vice president of manufacturing to marketing director, you name it. We've got CPAs in that role and we got accountants in that role. So how do you get more diverse than doing any job you want under the license of I'm an accountant?
Sure, I get that. It's just that the way accountants bill and price and the exams they do, TOMMYE's nodding at me now, it's been that way for hundreds of years. So they're not as open to change as one might think. But TOMMYE, you think they are?
Yeah, I think, to some degree, that's what people think of when they think of accountants. Yeah. So that's deserved, but I think oftentimes we get a bad rap. We are people. We like to, whether we like to admit it or not, we have to deal with people. And the better you are at that, then the better you're going to be at your profession and provide value for those clients. Yeah. I mean, I think about, you talked about agility. And one of the things that came to mind as Bill started talking was, in this environment that we're in now, we've been hearing over and over from managing partners of firms of all sizes that their partners have been telling them for years, we cannot do that. When in fact, they did that in about 48 hours when all of this hit. For example, working remotely and managing that remote workforce.
Yeah. Now we're going to talk about developing people, performance today. Bill, at 30,000 feet, how do we improve accountability and close competency gaps in development staff in professional firms?
Well, I'm going to kick it off and turn it back to TOMMYE, but I would tell you that the first thing is for some reason, accountants believe that we are unique in what we do. We are actually not unique in what we do. We follow the same business protocols that almost any would, and we have differences based on the fact that we're a service business. But we have a lot of similarities to every kind of service business.
Right.
And as we start talking with firms and we start going through, how do you become more effective? How do you hold people more accountable? Over and over, we just go back to basics of all business, and basics of all business start with accountability. And the first beginning point is I need to know who my boss is, because if I got 5 people telling me the same thing and I don't have enough time to do it, and I'm being told different things by different people, which one do I listen to and which one do I ignore? And the fact is, if all of our people knew the right person to listen to, wouldn't be a problem. But most of the time, who do you think they listen to? And I'm going to give you 2 choices. They're the one that they like the most, or the one that they're scared of the most.
Yeah.
So bottom line is, we have a lot of people trying to do their best job, and they have no idea who to listen to. And it creates a lot of developmental issues. It creates a lot of slow development and competency, and it creates a lot of it creates a lot of insecurity of people that shouldn't have it.
So let's take it up to Tommy. Tommy, firms are complex, especially the larger firms. There's multiple stakeholders, CPAs, accountants, fee earners. They're accountable to a lot of people, aren't they? So this idea of having one boss, does that really work?
I think the problem is they're not accountable to anybody oftentimes, and that's the problem. There's a lot of people are well-meaning. They take a shotgun approach, but they're not systematically and targeted developing their people. Lack of development of people is one of the biggest shortcomings that we find in firms, and it doesn't matter what size the firm is. And the fact that they not only don't know who their boss is, but they're not holding anybody accountable to anything is a real issue. And that's something that we can get our teeth into quite frequently, regardless of the size of the firm.
So when you talk about, go on, Bill.
Sorry, Rob, I need to add something to that. You will always have matrix management, meaning that I will have 20 bosses on any given day based on what projects I'm on. The question though is, who's responsible for me meeting my goals? Who's responsible for developing me? Who's responsible for ensuring that I am on the right trajectory with my competencies? That is different than what you just said. You just said, hey, how can you do this when you got multiple stakeholders? I know I'm going to be managed by everyone based on the project I work on. But as soon as I have a conflict or I don't know what to do, I know who my boss is to go get it solved.
But is it possible to be accountable to different people for different things? For instance, you're accountable to your clients for delivering great service and helping them solve their problems. So there must be different levels of accountability for different facets of the business.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's absolutely right.
Yes.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, here's where one of the big distinctions is. If Tommy's my boss, then not only do I know Tommy's which she is, by the way, I think she makes that clear all the time. She has actually named her cat as our CEO to make it clear the job she thinks I do.
Excellent.
But I have no idea where I was. But bottom line is, if
we're talking about accountability, and if I'm his boss, then I should have part of my pay tied to his development.
Yeah.
I'm accountable to make sure that he's developed. I think that's where you were going, Bill. Does that help you get back on track?
Exactly. Thank you for knowing what I was going to say. At the end of the day, part of the problem is that I could have 3 or 4 people that are technically I'm working with on a regular basis, and they all might believe they have some responsibility for me. But at the end of the day, no one is being paid to make sure I get there, which means that no one makes it their job to make sure I get there. Yeah. Under what Tommy just said, if I'm not performing, it reflects on Tommy. And I can tell you our profession is known for what I call the self-starter. I'll do it on my own, get out of my way. And that works for about 20 to 25% of your workforce, and you're throwing away 75%. And those are just bad economics.
Yeah. And when we talk about development of people, are you talking specifically technical development or maybe the softer skills?
you want to take a shot, Bill, or you want me to go first?
I'm going to do what Rob said I wouldn't do. I'm going to shut up. I believe he said that at the beginning. He said, why would we have two of you on? Tommy won't get a chance to talk.
It's a good job I'm editing this.
What's that?
It's a good job I'm editing this. Go ahead, Tommy.
It's a comprehensive approach. It includes the technical development, but you're also getting that technical development from the matrix approach that Bill described a few moments ago. But there's a lot of different competencies that we, in fact, have a tool that encompasses 15 competencies, and it includes what you referred to as soft skills and just being able to manage not only your time, but other people's, having the hard conversations with them, making sure that you're just a well-rounded professional that's going to be valuable to the firm as you progress throughout your career. Bill?
Historically, when it comes to competencies, most firms have not had strong models in competencies. Historically, my generation was if we had 10 competencies, we do have 15 in ours, but if we had 10 competencies, if I was really good at 3, I could be void of 7, because what mattered was, were you really good at 3? And what we're finding today is that actually works against a firm, because I might be a great business developer, but horrible at leading people. Well, I can't have partners that are half a partner. And so what you end up finding in a lot of firms is you find the business developer on one side and the technician on the other, and they only come together as a whole accountant when they work hand in hand. And we cannot afford to do that. We have to make holistically better people across technical and soft skills.
So we know accountants are super smart. They pass very difficult exams and qualifications, but how coachable are they as a breed? Because we're going to talk about this role of the developmental coach, aren't we?
Yeah, and I think most people are coachable. It's just a matter of how much stomach they have to be coached. And if they're not wanting to be coached, then they're going to be left behind by those that are on the upward track at a much steeper climb.
Which is one of the reasons why we simultaneously in all of this tie people's goals to performance. So if I have a partner or a manager that says, I'm not going to fill the role. First off, everybody is not a developmental coach. Everyone doesn't have that responsibility. But so out of the people we have, we ask who wants to do it out of the people that are best suited for it. We can get in more details on that later. But at the end of the day, if you are a developmental coach and you don't want to do the job, we will fire you as a developmental coach. You do not have a choice once you've accepted the job. You will either live up to the expectations of a developmental coach or we will replace you. It is too important of a job. You don't just get to say, I wanted the title, but I don't want to do the job.
Is it possible to rise up in a professional firm without having coaching capabilities? Because as a leader, as a manager, you then naturally come into contact with people and you've got to develop them and bring your team through, haven't you?
You know, some of these competencies are in people's DNA more than others of them are. So they have an easier time with some of them, but I still think that you've got to have a touch of all of them. You may be better at some than others, but I don't think you could ignore too many of them, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And I'll go a step further, Rob. The fact is most accountants do not know how to manage people. Most accountants learned from other accountants that did not know how to manage people. They simply bark orders and walk away and hope they get it done. They expect their people to be self-directed and self-motivated. And the point is, part of what we need to do is get better. What worked for us 25 years ago isn't working for us now. And that means that even people that have been leaders for 10 years may not be doing it very well.
I agree with that. And here at the Business Development Academy, we train accountants and CPAs to win work. And we say here, our methodology is a little simpler than yours in terms of competencies, but we say the modern day accountant has 5 core skills. The first is technical skills, which gets you in the game. The second is technological skills. You've got to know your way around the apps and the software and the tech and everything else, which is more than turning a computer on and off, because you've got to advise clients on that. Beyond that is people skills, which you would wrap all your leadership and management and coaching into that. Then you've got commercial acumen, that business acumen, the ability to think like an entrepreneur, to speak into the business's problems. And then finally, it's selling skills, not just selling products and services, but selling yourself and your ideas and your vision. So is that a decent enough framework to say, right, if we develop people along those lines, we're going to do okay?
I think that's a skinny down approach, and I think it covers a lot of them. One of the statistics that came to mind, Rob, as you were talking with regard to technical and other skills, I think it's Kuzus and Posner in their book talks about of the people that are promoted, 70% of the time, it's because of their technical skills.
Right.
But of those that fail, 80% of the time is because they don't have the people skills. So they can't operate in a vacuum. They can't operate in a silo. They have to be working together in order to have that better professional.
And how
the old days, we called that the Peter principle. You rose to your level of incompetency and stayed there because you were competent in the previous job, but each job kept adding more and more of those other skills you were talking about, Rob. Yeah. And people didn't develop them. And pretty soon you didn't do the job very well. So you stayed there, which think about it from the perspective of a success strategy. I want everyone at my upper levels to have dead ended in their job. That's a great one.
Yeah. Because you've developed them to the max then, haven't you? Yeah. So when you go into a professional firm with a view to developing their people, you must hit culture problems, right? That coaching mentality comes from culture, surely.
It does for sure. And a lot of people look at it from the standpoint of, I don't have time to develop my people, when in fact, you have to make the time to develop your people. You're not going to.
I get that a lot, Tommy, with business development. I don't have time to win business. I'm churning out fees and I'm looking after my own clients and I haven't got time to go out and bring in new business. So you're hitting against, is that culture? Is that personal preference? What is that?
Personal preference. Most accountants work beneath their level. They do the job. They want to be paid for the higher level, but they want to do the job that was easy for them at the lower level. And with every promotion, you take on the agreement that you will develop new skills. Well, if I got more work than I can possibly do, I can easily work down level and be productive, and I can do billing. The simple fact is we make money through leverage. We make money by passing work down. And what you just heard was, I don't want to pass the work down. I want to do what's easy. And I don't want to do my job, which is what you're outlining I need to do. So by the way, let me hide behind, I just don't have time. No, you just are doing the wrong thing with your time. Yeah. When we focus with firms, we often put more emphasis not on billable time, but how they're spending their non-billable time and set goals proportionately to make sure that we're directing them on what they do with that excess time.
So
when enough of those personal preferences do become the culture. If you get enough of that and enough traction, I think it does become the culture, Rob.
Yeah. And when you work with firms, do you set hard goals, KPIs? You talk about goals, but are these objectives with numbers on them, or are these more intangible?
Well, I'll start that one. The higher you go in a firm, the more they are subjective. The lower you are in a firm, the more they are objective. If you tie a partner level person to all objective goals, that person will manipulate the system all day long to meet numbers and get paid, but it won't do good for the firm. When you're at a high level, it's about tying strategy that you've agreed to back to change management. And so for one partner who is unwilling to delegate, that could be a big function for them goal-wise this coming year. Once we get them to where they've developed a habit of delegating, I'm not going to pay them for delegating the rest of their life. They should have been doing that as part of their job. I'm going to focus my compensation on strategically tying them to the strategy changes we've said we need to make. And if they don't make it, I'm going to put money where our mouth is. And if they don't do it again the next year, I'm going to double that money. And if they don't do it the next year, I'm going to fire them because they will not do their job. And they are trying to get paid at a job much bigger than what they're willing to step into.
You should really say what you think, Bill, a little bit more.
I'm sorry. I am very low key on this.
I've been coaching him to try and come out of his shell, Rob. I'm not quite having the
Tommy, what are managing partners of CPA firms responsible for?
They're responsible for implementing and executing the strategy of the firm that the board altogether sets. They're also responsible for setting the goals of the partners and holding them accountable to those goals and making sure that the compensation system is tied into those goals and whether or not they reach those goals. Those are a few things that they're responsible for.
And let's step back a little bit. Bill, can you give me a definition of the word accountability? I know you're big on this and people get that it's answering to someone or something in some way, but just wrap a little bit of meat around that for us.
Now you're trying to get me into knowledge part. That's why we have partners like Tommy. You know, she's got the knowledge. I just make up the stuff. But where accountability starts to me is that the minute I know what's expected of me, then it is now my job to live up to that expectation. Accountability means I can have every single person who works for me know exactly what I expect of them and know what it means to do a good job and be able to go home at the end of every day and say, I did a good job. I don't have to wait for someone to tell me because it's been made very clear to me what's expected of me and I know that I'm living up to that. Mm-hmm. Accountability isn't the fact that I can catch you doing something wrong. It's not the fact that I want to beat you for doing something wrong. It's not the idea that I get to disrespect you because I have a higher position. It is about allowing the person that's showing up to work enough information that they can drive themselves to that performance that's expected. And if they don't achieve it, have enough feedback along the way for someone to say, you're not making it. We agreed that you'd be here. You're here. Here's what I want to see you change.
But Tommy, that seems so straightforward. How can firms get that wrong?
Well, you know, kind of a joke among Bill, Dom, and me is that I'm the one of the three of us with the fewest words. And the way I would describe accountability is just simply doing what you said that you would do, doing what you have agreed and said that you would do. It's that simple, really.
But then
but you ask a question, Rob, why is that a problem? Because we have cultures that say, each of us, you go do your own thing. You self-motivate, we trust you. Well, that works when there's 3 of us. It works when there's 10 of us. But as you get bigger and bigger, I need to take all that energy and not let it go like this, where everybody's busting their butt and we're not going anywhere because we get halfway done with everything. And I need to focus that energy on the things that are the most important to us so that we can bring it together for the greatest change and the greatest good.
Got it.
And it is a problem too, because if people don't do what they said they were going to do, that's more work on the people that are trying to hold them accountable. And people would just as soon shove it under the rug oftentimes and go on about their merry way without having to deal with that.
And I'm guessing in these crazy times we're in with the pandemic globally, that it's harder to hold people accountable if they're working remotely, working from home, which is why you need these structures, these KPIs in place, however we're going to call it.
Yeah, that's right. It takes a lot more effort. It takes effort when you see each other every day walking down the hallway, but it takes a lot more effort when you have to check in remotely and some means of media.
Most people confuse the difference between what we call in this developmental coaching versus HR, because you can talk to anyone that is going to go through their human resource evaluation period. And the first thing that happens, and I know we're not on video, but whoever is got to evaluate their employees, the first thing they do is make a big sigh. Oh God, I got to do evaluations. And then they roll their eyes and then they say, but I really haven't been paying attention to them. So I'm now not even sure. And now I need to, in the next week, come up with a year's worth of evaluation. Developmental coaching is about a constant interaction based on where you are and where your goals are. It is not about writing everything to a file. It is, if Tommy's my boss, it is her job to make me better. And if she can't make me better, then she needs to get me out. But it's her job. So now there are 2 of us working for the same goal. It's my job to make me better, and it's her job to make me better. And we know exactly where to go when there's a problem, because in the typical firm, all the focus is on me, why I didn't get there, why I'm not making it. Well, I might not be getting there because I got 4 different people telling me 4 different things, and I'm doing the best I can to try to wade through that. Under this model, I know to go to Tommy, it's Tommy's issue, you need to fix Bill, and here's where he needs to be, and here's where he needs to go. All of us end up better off.
Got it. So in the larger firms particularly, what do you feel are the major challenges that they're facing right now? Tommy?
I think all firms are facing the challenge of not developing their people properly and not monitoring them properly, handing things off just to get it off of their plate. And then the person that they're handing it off to may or may not have the skills or the requisite knowledge to do it. They don't get monitored. And then they turn that work back in and it's a mess.
So,
It needs to be redone.
so how does that manifest itself then? Is that a profitability thing that comes out? The firm's not competitive, it's not growing fast enough and hitting revenue targets. How does that come out?
I think it's a combination of things. You know, as far as profitability, a lot of times people will say it takes me less time. I can do it faster and better if I do it myself, rather than taking more time to train someone else to do it. Yeah. It's a short-term gratification instead of a long-term strategy for them. It's an easy way out, I think.
Yeah.
And you know what suffers the most? Look at your screen there with BD on it. What suffers the most is we are efficient, but we're not effective. We put all of our energy in the now, and we don't put it in the holistic success of our firm. We don't achieve strategy. We just simply inch along repeating what we're doing. We have people that load up all their work, and then they have no more time, and they don't delegate, and they don't have anybody trained. So they create bigger and bigger competency gaps, which makes it almost impossible for them to pass work down. We simply get in a mode that makes us more and more likely to work harder to make the same amount of money, to constantly underutilize our lowest level people because we can't push work down to them because we can't train them, and allow us to hide behind our jobs and work at least a level or two below what we're being paid, which ultimately ends up in stagnation of a firm's organic growth because people aren't doing their jobs.
Mm-hmm. What kind of things are coming up for professional firms over the next 6-12 months?
I think there's going to be continual having to deal with the technology. Bill has said, and I agree with him, that this whole pandemic has moved us forward probably 5 years, if not more, as far as technology goes, just from the sheer necessity of having to do that.
Yeah.
Some firms are more nimble than others in trying to embrace that technology. And those that don't are going to have even more challenges, I think. Talent continues to be an issue. We're restructuring the exam in the U.S. at least to try and have at least a broader umbrella with people having broader skills that, from a technology standpoint, a financial advisor type standpoint, just to bring those into the fold of the CPA profession so that we can look, a lot of firms aren't even hiring CPAs as their primary go-to hires because they need broader skill sets than that. And until this point, we've been way too targeted, I think, and we're trying to fix that. Bill, you've been more involved with that than I have during your year as chair. You probably have more comments on that.
Well, we certainly added to the base of, accounting, auditing, tax, and now tech. We expect every CPA coming through to have a tech background. No different than we expected them to have the other components. I think our profession is trying to step back and say, if you look at where we are, we have historically been in the data to information space. We take raw data and we put it out as a tax return or an audit or a financial statement or something. But as a profession, we need to move to the knowledge and decision space, because the data to information space will be taken over by either technology or outsourcing globally. Because at 20 to 25 cents on the dollar of what we pay in the US, and I know the economics aren't much different in the UK, you cannot afford to build a business when somebody can undercut you and make money coming in at 25 cents on the dollar. Yeah. So the information space will go away to AI and technology and globalization, which says if we're going to survive, you have to do exactly what Tommy says. We got to get smarter. We got to spend our time at higher levels and higher functions. And by the way, this is no different for a CPA or an accountant in public than it is for an accountant in industry. You take an accountant in industry that basically just says, my job is to get out the monthly financial statements, they will be replaced. It is no longer that kind of job.
And you're talking here about the downgrade and the devaluing, the commoditization, if you like, of compliance work, which is easily automated. And we need to be elevating CPAs to that level of trusted advisor where it goes beyond the data.
That's exactly right. And now more than ever, given where we are now, people are going to emerge from this pandemic in all sorts of shapes. They may have very little financial resources left. Their model may be completely wrong post-COVID than pre-COVID. So it's incumbent upon the CPA profession to be in front of their clients on a regular basis, talking about all aspects of their business, not just the debits and the credits, but the strategy, the value of what's going on in their industry, and how can you best position yourself or help your client get positioned to move forward at a much higher level and a much healthier level than they otherwise could be.
Yeah, this has been great. I've learned so much already. We're coming to the end of it now. Bill, if people want to reach out to you and have some conversations with you two about the kind of things you could do for them, what's a good way for them to reach you?
Well, the best way is they can go to our website at successioninstitute.com, successioninstitute.com. Sorry, I said that fast. And you can look up either one of our names. It'll tie us quickly back to the website. A lot of information's out there on the website. There's a form they can fill out, or our emails are very available. They can easily pick up the phone and call us based on the information on the website.
And tell me, what kind of challenges do firms acknowledge that they're having by the time they pick up the phone to you and talk about help?
Usually there's some sort of partner conflict.
Right.
Those are the best ones to get involved in. And honestly, they'll often say, we're fighting about X, we're fighting about compensation. And when we get it, by the time we get in there and get to the root of the matter, that's just a symptom. It's not the root cause. So just recognizing that they need help and then allowing us to come in and help them find out what they need help with that's our bread and butter. That's our sweet spot.
Yeah, sure. This has been terrific. Would you both leave us with a bit of advice for the accountants, the CPAs listening, the individuals, and they might be leaders, they might be at the top of the tree, but what would you say to them about developing themselves and developing their people to cope with what's coming up over the next year or two? Bill, can we start with you?
Yeah, I would just say, don't settle. I mean, recognize that you are part of the greatest profession there is. There's more versatility in what we can do with our licenses, and we can always shift or pivot, however you want to describe it, and maintain our value and relevance. Bill? You know, one of the things that people get scared about is we've been paying lip service to the idea that we're going to be trusted advisors, and we've been paying lip service to the fact that we know we need to make certain strategic changes and internal changes, but we've been so successful. Why do it? Why do anything when you're making more money than you ever thought you would? What the pandemic is showing, what technology is doing, what globalization is doing, is it's forcing people to recognize that it's time to change. And here's the good news, and where I'd like to leave everybody thinking. Nobody's in a box at this point. Nobody's been left out. If you start to make change, then 2 or 3 years from now, there'll be a big difference in the way your firm operates, and you'll still be there ahead of the curve. But if you don't do anything and you say, well, Bill, I make so much money, I just simply think you're wrong, it's not a big deal, then they're going to feel like Thelma and Louise. And I know that's a reference a lot of people won't get, but they're going to be driving along thinking they got a long road ahead, and there is a cliff. And they're going to wake up and say, what happened to me? And the point is, we're telling you, this is what the world looks like. There are all kinds of signs proving this is what the world looks like. But if you don't want to see it and you want to pretend like I can just do what I've always done and I'll be okay, you're going to find a cliff and you're going to say, how did that happen? And I'm just telling you, it's because you're ignoring looking at the road ahead.
Yeah, and you can't help but think that in some accounting firms, there's a certain arrogance, a certain complacency. We have a great business model. We have recurring fees. People need us to stay out of jail. That can inhibit the change you're talking about, can't it? And
people have the misconception that what got them here is going to keep them going. And it just won't happen. As the firm gets bigger, they have to change.
Yeah.
Well, interestingly enough, firms have changed a great deal. If you look at the services we offered as a profession 10 years ago, and the services we offer today, they are so much more expanded and so much more diverse. But we always look back and go, yeah, we're doing the same thing we've always done. No, they've been changing, and they're going to have to continue to change. It's just that simple.
That's a really great point to finish. Bill, Reeb, TOMMYE, BARIE, that's been terrific. Thank you so much for your insights and your passion today. You've been watching or listening to the Accounting Influencers podcast featuring hosts Rob Brown and Martin Bissett with key interviews, what's working in the accounting profession, and news from the accounting and fintech world that helps you do your jobs better. We go out to 144 countries, over 20,000 unique listeners with 100,000 downloads, and it is accredited for continued professional education and development. Thank you for tuning in.